Howdy, readers. I'm Jason. This is Chapter and Verse, and this is, I think, my first ever Friday Reads video. There's a lot of changes here, right? I mean, this is only the second video that I've shot from this corner of the room, looking into the camera lens in a different spot from what I'm used to. I do my sign off at the end. I think I'm going to probably have to do that with my left hand. Bear with me. But I'm reading something right now that I'm finding so wonderful. I decided that I had to do a Friday Reads to tell you guys about it. And the book, I'm reading two books right now actually, but the book that I'm reading is, let's see if we can get it here. This is The World Only Spins Forward, the Ascent of Angels in America. Now, for those of you who don't know, which I suspect is very few of you, I suspect most of you are familiar with these plays. The Angels in America plays are by Tony Kushner. And it's essentially a single play, right, that he wrote in two parts. The first part coming to him much more easily than the second part did. So Angels in America. It's a play in two parts. The first part is called Millennium Approaches. The second part is called Perestroika. The first part won the Pulitzer Prize for drama. Both of them won the Tony Award for Best Play. They had their initial Broadway runs, and they're extraordinary. I have read the plays. I have taught the plays. I have seen the first one, Millennium Approaches, on the stage at the University of Wyoming in Laramie, Wyoming. And the miniseries, which was released on HBO 21 years ago, I've seen many, many times. And we just recently watched the miniseries, a rewatch for me, in my Wednesday night film club. And so I thought, well, I will start reading this book, right? So this is an oral history of essentially the creation of those plays and the legacy of those plays. Just how large, an oral history about how large Angels in America as a project has loomed in American culture and in the American consciousness. And not just America either. I mean, there's quite a bit in this book about productions in other places, right? It was turned into an opera that premiered in Paris, and it had a production that had a very, very long run in, I think it was Holland. But anyhow, so The World Only Spins Forward was given to me by Steve Donahue. I'll link Steve's channel below. He had hauled it in one of his famous mail haul videos, if I remember right, and I saw it, and I was just like, oh my God, I have to have that book. And so, yeah, I think I just sent him a Voxer message or an email or something, and groveled so that he would send it to me, and he did. And I'm so glad that he did. The reading of this book, right now, if you don't know, if you've never read a quote-unquote oral history, so essentially what the editors of The World Only Spins Forward have done is they have interviewed upwards of 200 people who had some role in the genesis of these plays, the various incarnations of these plays, and they have done essentially what Svetlana Alexievich does with her oral histories. They have created a kind of tapestry or mosaic of voices of the people who were involved in the decades of these plays coming to audiences. And so there are interviews, and again, right? So like it's not just like a block interview and then a block interview and a block interview. They take the interviews and they slice and dice them, so that it seems like, and it may very well have been the case with many of the interview subjects. It seems like they're all in a room together talking about this, and it's absolutely magnificent reading. Now, ideally, right, the perfect audience for this book is someone who, like me, is really familiar with the plays, with the miniseries. Any one of 10,000 Ways seems like a work of art can be experienced. But I don't think you need to be familiar with Angels in America to find The World Only Spins Forward to be rewarding. Okay? I have learned so much from this book about how the world of a theater operates, right? Behind the scenes, the economics of it, how plays are done, right? Like, I mean, a play that is produced for a theater, in a theater, right? That is written on commission. This is not something that just, like I always thought, naively maybe, that just springs fully formed out of a writer's mind. They lock themselves in a room for a month and come out with this play. The workshop process that is involved in the creation of plays like this, I had no idea. I had no idea how complicated it was, and how many people had some kind of say in what ended up on the page and what was cut and what was saved. And I just didn't know. I didn't know how complex it really all was, right? It was like Roy Cohn's Octopus, the creation of these plays. And I've learned so much about the actor's craft and how challenging it can be for actors to take on roles that are really close to home, right? I mean, one of the actors in the book talks about, he plays Joe in one of the productions, and Joe is a lawyer, probably early 30s, a closeted gay Mormon man, and throughout the Angels in America plays, he finds himself essentially forced to come to terms with who he is, and and how that's going to affect his marriage, how it's going to affect his career, how it affects his identity, how it affects on some level his faith, and but we read in one of the interviews in this book, we read about an actor who played the role of Joe in one of the early productions, and he himself was a closeted gay man at that time, and it's fascinating to read about how these actors see themselves in the character, the degrees to which they need to distance themselves from the characters. And Tony Kushner is the writer, like the involvement that he has in these productions. And I had no idea how involved writers could be sometimes in productions. And apparently they're usually not as involved as he is. But I don't know if it's something about the genius of the work, the brilliance of those plays, that the directors often feel compelled to allow him a greater presence in their vision for how to bring these to the stage than they would with the writer of any other play or most other plays. I don't know. But the whole thing is just, every single page is fascinating reading. The anecdotes are wonderful. Sometimes they're laugh out loud funny. Sometimes there are anecdotes that are so incredibly moving. On 2 different occasions, I have told Kelly about anecdotes in this book. I did not read them to her from the page. I just related them secondhand to her because I thought she would find them interesting. And on those 2 occasions, my just telling her about these anecdotes from the book made her burst into tears. It's powerful stuff. It's really powerful stuff, and I just want all of you to read it. Right, it's in paperback now, and I decided to do this Friday reads because I haven't seen anybody talking about this book on BookTube anywhere. It's like Steve told me that it wasn't widely reviewed. I find the story of the creation of these Angels in America plays so gripping, and so unusual, and so absurdist in some ways, and so devastating in other ways. I find myself wishing this was like a 10-part documentary miniseries, that they had filmed these interviews and they'd gone back and they had found the theaters where they were staged, and given us footage and incorporated old photographs, maybe old video of the productions. I think it would make such a fucking good movie, it's not ever going to be a movie. I mean, I just can't imagine anybody would pony up the dough for that. But please find the book, right? The World Only Spins Forward. The editors or authors/editors are Isaac Butler and Dan Coyce. I think Dan Coyce is a writer for Slate. If you've ever, been curious about what the world of the professional theater looks like, and not just on Broadway, but in smaller cities, a more kind of fringe drama groups. If you've been interested in learning about that, if you're interested in the craft of acting, if you're interested in how literary works get turned into films, right? I had no idea that Robert Altman was originally supposed to direct two movies from these plays, and the project just fell through. And then for a while, Neil LaBute, right, the playwright and filmmaker Neil LaBute, was going to be was talking to Tony Kushner about possibly directing the films, and that is my segue actually into the second book that I'm reading. But Neil LaBute, in his interview in the book, right? He says, Kushner says Neil LaBute and I talked for quite a while about it, and then LaBute says it was primarily in 2001. I had kids who were Mormons, and that was going to be a really tricky world for me to navigate. People within the church judged the play, often without seeing it, because of the combination of the religion and the poor choices that many of those characters made. I knew it would be a powder keg, although that didn't make me shy away as much as I don't think I was the right person. Like many projects, you end up being the person who watches it, rather than the person who makes it. And I found that very interesting for Neil LaBute to say, because the other book that I'm reading right now, and have been reading since before I started The World Only Spins Forward, is A.S. Byatt's Possession. And this is my third reading, I think, of this book. And I'm about halfway through it now. And I really love this novel. And I really like the movie that Neil LaBute made from Possession. But the whole reason I decided to read this again is because when I'm done reading it, I plan to make a video about it and the adaptation of it that LaBute directed, starring Aaron Eckhart and Gwyneth Paltrow. And the reason I've long wanted to make this video about Possession is that there are maybe a half dozen moments in Possession, in the film, that really, really, really bother me. That feel like LaBute, even though, it had other screenwriters, including Laura Jones, if memory serves, who wrote the screenplay for Oscar and Lucinda, which is, one of my favorite films based on one of my favorite books. But there are moments in the film of Possession that feel like LaBute interjecting his own personality, his own worldview in a way, and at times, that feels very much at odds with the spirit of Byatt's fiction, and with the spirit of the film, the spirit of the story that he's telling. And I've always been just really, really, really troubled by those moments. And so I got to thinking, I wonder, like, do any of those have their source in Byatt's novel? I mean, it's possible. And so I went into the reading of this third reading, looking specifically for that, for moments in the book that relate to those scenes, looking for the specific lines themselves in the book. And so I plan to make a video about how Neil LaBute, in his own words, as much as I don't think I was the right person, sometimes you end up being the person who watches a project rather than the person who makes it. He was a filmmaker who should not have made Possession. He was not the right director for it. The film is good. It's really good. I've seen it a lot of times, but he was not aesthetically, but with respect to his sensibility, he was the wrong filmmaker to make a movie of this novel. So this is magnificent. There are. It's a long section in this book that's epistolary, and we have these. It's a series of letters between these a female poet and a male poet during the Victorian age, and we find ourselves as we're reading it. I find myself anyway thinking or realizing that Byatt not only has to persuade us that this letter or that letter is in the voice of a woman or is in the voice of a man, but she has to persuade us of very different worldviews on their behalfs, and also she has to write prose in those letters that is convincingly of a different century. And not only that, but it has to be in two different voices from that century. And it really is quite a juggling act. And the ventriloquism, it's interesting, right? Like, there's a fictional biography of one of the fictional poets in the book called The Great Ventriloquist by one of Byatt's characters. And it's just a funny kind of winking reference to herself in some ways, because she really is the great ventriloquist, right? Not Randolph Henry Ashe, the subject of Mortimer Cropper's biography, but Byatt herself is the one who is, putting on voices and perspectives and hang-ups, I suppose, of all these different characters in these different time periods, and it's convincing, and it's beautiful, and it's mysterious, and it's just it's a really great book. So Neil LaBute was just the wrong director for it, and I plan to unpack why that is in a future video. But please get on Amazon, wherever you buy your books, and look for The World Only Spins Forward. It's tremendously entertaining. It's enthralling. It's the best book I've read since I read Comet for March of the Mammoths a couple years ago. So I'd say, it's the best book I've read in at least a couple years. And not that I've been in a reading slump, I'm reading less because it's been challenging for me with my heart condition, and the fatigue created by that to read. I like reading the World Only Spins Forward is like the only thing I've been wanting to do for the last couple of weeks. When I'm at work, I'm thinking about that book. When I'm watching a film, I'm thinking about that book. I'm driving around town on errands, I'm thinking about that book. So, I've got, 60 pages left or something like that. So I'll finish it this weekend. But, I wanted to take this opportunity to I do my best to sell all of you on it. So please go look for it. You won't be disappointed. And if you're familiar with the Angels in America plays, I mean, you won't be disappointed to the 10th power. We'll just say that. Anyhow, I hope you all are doing well, and I hope to see you again in a video very soon. Adios.